All right, welcome to Good to Geek Out. Good place to go to geek out. If you got kids that want to geek out, they can come geek out. They're in Rob Lucy's background, but you guys can't see them yet. You'll see them in a minute.
They'll probably pop there. There's one of them. Say hi, Gavin. There's
Hi.
There they are.
special guest today. Special guest.
We got generational geeking out going today. Here to cover The Mandalorian, Chapter 15, True Believer. We got myself, my boys, and some kids. Generations. What's up, fellas?
Doing good. Rob Lucy coming at you from Phoenix, Oregon. Shall we rise from the ashes? Charlotte and Gavin, special guest today, with a different perspective.
A fresh perspective. That's the perspective we were looking for, right, Ed? Those fresh eyes to help us guide through the show, the new person. I'm Rob, Boba Fresh, San Francisco, LA born, and really looking forward to going back to Morak with you on a Geek Attack, Zach Attack, Lego Maniac. Where is Zach the Lego Maniac today?
Good question. Good question. Do not know. Probably under quarantine for the COVID.
You'd hope.
All right. First, before we start, shout out to Super Bobby 420 on this episode. The way the episode begun was pretty interesting, right? We get to see the AT-ATs again in the junkyard. I like this cold open a lot. Inmate 34667.
Mm-hmm.
What's his name? Wait.
Mayfield.
Mayfield. Doesn't Bill Burr sound like a more made-up name than Mayfield somehow?
Maybe.
Explain that. How's that real life? It is pretty dope, like especially as being like a Star Wars person, and we see all these remnants of the Empire. We get to see just an Empire junkyard, a little walker on its side. You get the close-ups, like it was pretty good. And then right before it ends, you get the he doesn't even call him Boba. He calls him Fett. No one's called him Fett in Star Wars yet. To the Fett. What'd you guys think about it?
I thought the opening with the giant AT-AT cranes visually was amazing. I think this episode does pose and actually literally ask some serious moral questions. Here we get to see the gray area between prisoner and slave that the Republic is going for. Yeah, I'm sure he wasn't the only one on that planet, and they need labor too. Kind of brought me back to some of the things that we talked about during some of the Clone Wars episodes, and previously on The Mandalorian about some of the moral ambiguity, depending on which perspective you're coming at the Star Wars universe from. What'd you think, Rob?
I agree. A lot of stuff just got thrown at the wall right there, so I'm gonna go at it at a linear way and say that with just the intro, it was dope. We're talking about Mayfield. We're already excited to see him in a weird way. He seems very expendable. He can die throughout the entire episode. But the fact that we see him in the junkyard with a bunch of other discarded Imperial remnants that are destroyed through the means of battle and war, and he's sitting there breaking them down while an AT-AT in the background is being repurposed also for this junkyard duty. So you have just this like poetic setup, and then you get the prison guard that was on the ship before, but this one's all dirtied and like doing its job, but you still get the redemption almost for the droids to be like, well, he's still like under the they got back in like this way. So I think the intro worked real well with the intro, with everything. Yeah, it was moody. It was cool and moody.
So before we do leave that intro, I would like to say how dope it was that you could see the gears on Slave One
Oh, on the inside?
while they're
Oh,
talking,
yeah.
and it finally makes sense how that ship moves in so many different directions, and yet the people inside don't spill their drink.
Yeah, I thought that was amazing too. Hey, if you
So
guys get
subtle too. They didn't even like call attention to it. It's like you had to know and pay attention. It's just another reason why this show is like just pay attention to all the stupid details no one cares about except for people like us. On that note, uh,
Nailed
off to Morak. Off to Morak we go. The secret mining hub. Fett, punch it. And there you go. Or punch in the coordinates, I think is what he says. They're crewed up. This crew is pretty tight, and we see it the second they land. What'd you guys think from that landing on?
I really I thought it was cool. It does show a very big plot hole that has been part of Star Wars, I think, since the very since Star Wars Episode 4, and that we live in this futuristic, or we're seeing this futuristic galaxy with weapons and things. But it turns out all you need to do to get through the most sophisticated security is pop on a stormtrooper outfit, and you're in.
So I think that, again, the way that they drop in the tropes with the various episodes, they hit us real quick with the Western, and they go deep into the Western motif again with this one. And the Juggernaut train heist is done great as they move through slow. And again, with these indigenous worlds, like we see how the people are getting exploited, and Bill Burr with his line, and like it doesn't matter if it's the Empire or the New Republic, you know, like who's doing what to them, it doesn't make a difference. And I think on various levels that works right now in the political scope of the world that we live in. There's a lot of people who feel that why should they even engage in the political realm? Like, why should they vote if they're not doing anything? So I think that it hit home on this different resonance, but also when we're thinking that this is a call to a Western. So these are analogous to Indigenous Americans or or it's Vietnam, and you know, like they're native Vietnamese who are just caught in the middle, and so it's cool the way that they go back to the first season, because that's the real feeling of that fourth episode when we finally, like, he gets out there with the woman and saves the everyone in the rice paddies. So I thought it was real cool the way that they had the train. They're kind of just looking out, and then you just start seeing the destroyed juggernauts. And we don't really know why the juggernauts are destroyed. Like the way that they kept the story away from us and slowly revealed it was really, really a treat. I think they did a great job.
Nah, you're right, because it's a very slow build up with the audio cutoffs, and then you don't get the visual for a few minutes. I think Bill Burr is still like ending his speech when it starts, so it's like this weird fade out into what ends up happening, and then they start talking about what's actually on the Juggernaut, the Rhydonium, and it's explosive and all. Like it feels like every like 3 minutes they're adding something to it, but not to the point where, well, maybe occasionally, to the point where it becomes like this is too much, or like you guys are just trying to throw shit to the wall and see what sticks. Like it all kind of makes sense. It's all kind of congruent with what has already happened in the series this season, and then it also calls back to shit that happened last season. So like, you know, kudos, good for you. That's better than the last 3 Star Wars movies if you look at them together. Like best Star Wars in 20 years, I'm telling you.
Yeah, for sure.
You missed the entire pirate, quote unquote, Native Americans running up on these on the train, trying to hijack the train, even though they can't really do anything to it. And so, like, again, this the beautiful Western motifs that they end up putting on, and so they had those skiffs come, and these guys are trying to jack him, and he's got to get out. And you see, first of all, they're good shots. It's funny when Mando's gun clip runs empty, and he's got to go hand to hand. But again, that's where I think you get the indigenous feel, because these guys are working with spears and thermal detonators, and the breadth of technology difference that is pretty significant. Like, so it's almost, I want to say, like one-shot rifles and bow and arrows, like, you know, like muskets and bow and arrows, like this happening. So the fight scenes were cool. They meant something. It was very reminiscent of the Firefly Serenity movie chase scene when they're leaving the town in the beginning and they're getting chased by the Reavers. So a lot of this design was all interwoven into just an awesome thing. But what I think is getting up to your point about the celebration, I think what is dope is that we get the Imperial side of this experience. And when we get the Imperial TIE fighter being the Millennium Falcon in New Hope, and he's like, woohoo! Yeah, they're saved, you know. So like, to run this, to switch the prism and to change the angle, it's kind of like when Barney Stinson starts talking way back when about Cobra Kai and Karate Kid, and now, you know, here we are with Cobra Kai and Karate Kid. But that if you look at, depending on your lens, you know, like, who's the bad guy when, you know, when they're all exploiting you anyway.
Okay, so once again, so much happened very quickly. As I said earlier, it's like every 3 minutes something's popping, or you're getting some information. I actually gleamed over something myself. The Mando out of armor. You get to see him be himself without the armor. You've never seen that this whole series, and it's also a little bit of a reminder of Boba Fett last episode before he got his armor. Just so you know, these dudes are badass dudes with or without the armor, and the armor is almost like Batman. You know, who do you make the suit, or what? Like Batman, Batman makes Batman. And then
and on that, no, I totally agree with you. And they did a great job throughout the season seeding the armor and him softening on this position, as opposed to the first season when it was with the armorer and he's just Mandalorian, and like it's all about the click. And in this one, by seeing Boba Fett still practice the ways of Mandalore, he's immediately put into okay, this is something I can be respectful. Excuse me. Something I can be respectful and still do. But we also see him, this is kind of a callback to his meeting with Bo-Katan earlier in the season, and her being like, yeah, those are religious nuts who don't take their helmets off. So I mean, if you want to go...
It's also a testament to what he's willing to do to get Grogu back. Lucy, what did you think about that celebration?
It reminded me of Maverick and I think it was not Iceman. Maverick and Iceman landing back on the Nimitz class aircraft carrier, and everybody's on the flight deck cheering them on, and you know, well, you can see Mayfield is kind of reveling in it, but he also knows that he has a job to do. So it did humanize. You know, it was one of the first scenes ever in Star Wars where it's humanized. You know, the just basic Imperial soldier. It was Finn was able to do that a bit in the most recent movies.
I would argue, if we're going to talk about episode 4, the two stormtroopers discussing the recent T-17 Skyhopper coming out with an excellent way to look into just the average life of an Imperial at that day and age. So, excuse me while I get my glasses back up my nose. And no, I think you're completely right. And the fact that they are showing... They're showing the humanistic side. They're showing like, yo, like you made it, we made it. It taps into the thing about Mayfield, about what he liked about being in the service. And so, like, let's also be real. Like, this is, you know, talking about the Vietnam War and all that. Like, there's a lot of the trauma that ends up coming out of the war about, and just any war where generals are just throwing soldiers into the meat grinder. And so the second that Mayfield gets back there and he's like, oh, this is what I love. Like, I love the camaraderie of being a soldier, like the camaraderie of like boots on the ground who are, this is us. We're doing something together.
Band
like,
of brothers. They were a band of brothers.
A band of brothers, exactly. And I was actually curious about your opinion on that, Lucy, as a veteran yourself.
Yeah, well, certainly, like you can see it on both sides. Combat, brings you closer together. You have to watch each other's backs. And just to, kind of reiterate what we've both been talking about, I've been talking about, it shows you that these aren't just, mindless stormtroopers. There's people inside those suits. And, in a few minutes following this, after they figure it out, and he says, hey, I can't go in there. That was my commander back in the day, and he might recognize me, and I don't want to take that risk. I don't know why you just didn't put your helmet back on. That's neither here nor there. But and then he says, yeah, I did serve under you. And then they'll have the speech. I don't know if you want to get straight to that point, but he was like, hey, I saw 10,000 of my brothers die that day. It was a massacre. And then the commander was like, well, sacrifices had to be made. They felt, the sacrifice was duly noted. They should be proud. And he's like, they never went back to their families, man. He's like, well, but we're still here. We're here now.
Heroes of the Empire.
From his perspective, he's like, man, that's PTSD. That PTSD just all came rushing back when he was like, yeah, well, we're here now. And that's when he's like, all right, and caps him. And it starts their escape scene, which was a really cool scene.
So for people who don't know, and I don't know if even you guys know what Operation Cinder was, which was basically the trigger.
Do I know? No, yeah.
Tell us.
If you played Battlefront 2 and you went through as Jyn Erso and thus followed the storyline, multiplayer was quite fascinating. But they offered a single player option, and it turns out that her father's the admiral, and he was going to allow the Emperor's final plan to just fucking burn it to the ground. So yeah, Operation Cinder was a plan of the Emperor to basically salt the Earth throughout the universe and destroy any useful planets. The exchange, once again, with the Western appeal of this Southern drawled officer,
right?
And you just like, I don't like him. Like,
even his teeth were like off colored. Like, it was just weird and it wasn't even Nazi-ish, but it felt like, it was weird.
No, because it's not Nazi, it's a Confederate. It's a different, different. That was the thing, is that it was ours. It wasn't Nazis, it was homegrown.
So you're right.
And the insidiousness of his nature and the way that he was just like, it's a meat grinder, this is what happens. But when he takes pride in saying, but they're all heroes of the Empire. And that's when Mayfield loses it. And again, just like great tension and buildup, because you also have that flip of Mando being there like, dude, don't do this.
All great. But one thing I noticed about the Mandalorian without the helmet, he did not have that same confidence and swagger with the helmet off. He kind of looked almost lost, like, hey, bud, help me out here. I don't know how to act in public without my helmet on, which I thought was interesting and a great directorial focus.
Something actually that reminded me of that I wanted to point out back on the train scene, when he's fighting with those dudes, he has his back turned and he gets whacked and the guys hit him and the Imperial armor shatters and all that. It's because he's used to wearing Beskar. And so like, he's just like, yeah, I don't turn around. Like, there's so much of my fighting style that is already absorbed in this. And so you see that adaptation already happening as he's moving into this thing. And to go back to the big point, we're kind of forgetting like the whole thing that's starting it off, is us waiting to see if he's going to take the helmet off or not, because we haven't seen, that's how good that scene was with Bill Burr.
Funny about that scene, like I was watching, I think I was watching it with Gavin, and then Charlotte was in her room or something. She's like, Charlotte, the Mandalorian took off his helmet. And then Charlotte came running out to see what he looked like. And she's like, oh, okay.
No, but you're right though. It is seeded because when Bill Burr's having his what I call the "Born on the 4th of July" speech. Uh, he says a lot of things that are directed towards Mando about his creed and about Alderaan and Mandalore and how they don't exist anymore and all these different things. And his response is silence and looking straight forward. And that's what he ends up doing the rest of the episode without his mask on, because he is being challenged and confronted, and you don't really get to, you can see his like uncomfortableness with the mask on, but once it's off, there's no hiding, and you can just see him like looking around and not knowing what to say and stuff. And I mean, it's really well done, because you can go back and watch it and see, like we just mentioned, like we had to go back on comments on ideas because we keep going forward, and you're like, oh yeah, what about this that I saw? What about this that I saw? Because there is so much to see in this episode. It's really well done. I enjoyed it.
That actually reminds me of something before we get into the awesome dam escape scene. I was like, Ed hasn't called this a filler episode. This is 100% what you normally would say.
Probably.
Like, but did we learn anything? Like, did it move the story forward?
Not at all.
Not at all.
But it's
it
not
was a
filler.
beautiful. Exactly, but it wasn't a filler. It gave us a fun break from all of this stuff, but the stakes are still high because of Grogu in the background. But getting on to, so Mayfield shoots dude, and they just kind of like all look around, and again Mayfield's a sharpshooter, and he's just boom, 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 and the way everything goes down. Again, this saloon, the shootout in the saloon is just beautifully done, in the way that the guys run in. It's like the saloon doors and everything, and they're just like, as soon as they just well choreographed for something that wasn't like a dynamic fight scene like we had on the top of the train. Like, it wasn't martial arts and all of this. Like, they made a gunfight exciting and sensible. Like, gunfights aren't quick. Like, these things kill you in a shot. That's what they're designed to do.
I really like the escape scene. He surprised everybody, and he took out his former commander, which hastens their escape. What I thought was a little ironic, after him talking about how important, his band of brothers, if you will, is he does take that sniper shot and blow up the Iridium, thus killing the dozens, if not hundreds, of soldiers or stormtroopers we just saw inside that base, which he was just pissed at his former commander for basically sacrificing a lot of people. But it played to the point, and also redeemed him in the eyes of Cara Dune. She's like, oh, okay. It sounded like she was just ready to take him straight back to prison when they were all done. So why did he even agree to do it in the first place? But it's a nice walk off into the sunset moment for him. Not a bad planet to be on. He's resourceful. Seems like it's lush and green. He doesn't have to deal with the Empire.
It's also an excuse to give that classic Star Wars trope of looking over someone's shoulder while a ship flies away for the millionth time.
And then it leads into the very final scene where Cara Dune is. So what's our next move? And surprisingly, Mandalorian announces he's coming for Baby Yoda with the crew straight to Moff Gideon. What did you think about that?
I thought it was dope. I did not realize. I thought it was like heartwarming. It kind of gave me chills. And it wasn't until the second time I realized he was addressing Moff Gideon's message from season 1.
Right. They have that in the recap in the very beginning of the episode.
Then I'm not paying attention.
Oh, and of course the seismic bomb when the TIE fighters were following them, and
awesome. And that was another great reason to watch episode 2. There's not many. I told you last episode, like that Fett episode, maybe. And I did. And one of the things I liked about that was when he starts dropping the seismic charges when they're going through the asteroid field. And I was like, yes, it wasn't wasted, but it was.
And yeah, and then finally, yeah, I'm gonna call you up, homie. I'm coming for you. What up?
Yeah.
Like that call out was dope, and it reminded me earlier in the season when Mando walks in with the baby and into the fighting ring, the Gamoran fighting ring, like when we're setting the tone. And I'm like, don't do that with the baby. And I'm like, oh wait, you're the Mandalorian. Like you ain't tripping. Like you ain't scared of nobody. And so like to have that same confidence, like get re-exerted here. And he's like, yeah, I'm coming. And I want to give it up to Moff Gideon for looking pissed and a little concerned. And like, like he had a lot of expression of it. That man is an amazing actor. Esposito is amazing fucking actor. And I think they've done a great job. I think they did a really great job.
I agree with you there.
I agree. All right. On that note, let's close it out. Editor, San Antonio. I did not go across because they might recognize my face. The Boba Fett line that was just dropped. That was funny as fuck, and nobody knew what the fuck he was talking about. They just based the whole fucking clone army on his face right here. They might recognize me.
Yeah,
great. No, it's so subtle too. He only has like 2 lines in the episode, dude. Like they're setting him up really well for his series. They're not spoiling him.
Hey, Rob Lucy signing out from Southern Oregon. Good talking about this episode. Hey, can't wait till next. It's not even. It's this week. We are 5 days away from the finale, heading into Christmas. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to talking about it with my friends. See you next week.
Boba Fresh, San Francisco. This is the way.